Hey everyone, Tim Higgins here. I'm going to do probably two, maybe three, but mostly two videos, and I may just combine it to one. But right now I'm focused on two separate videos, just to make it easier. Talk about some powerful things that you can want to know how to do in Javelin. So one thing about Javelin that is very powerful that most people don't know about is the data table itself. Now I've mentioned it before. I may have another video on this, but I want to get a little bit more detailed in this one. The idea of the data table is it really is just a kind of like a spreadsheet, if you will, in memory. So it has your columns and your rows. In fact, if you do something like this, I think it's called system.data, let's see, maybe data table, because data row is just a feature of that. And right here it is. So it's a class in Microsoft. If you remember, I said before, Javelin is based off Microsoft. But this kind of is just a data table. So here's a data set. A data set is just a one read. Here's the data table itself. A lot of this was a little bit older school programming, but it still exists. Back in ASP, it was very heavily before .NET. So I've been programming this for a long time, but it's really not hard to grasp. Okay, so you have columns, you have rows, and a data set. You'll see what that is here soon, hopefully. But the idea of the data table is what I want to focus on. And like I said, you have data rows, and you have data columns, okay? So if I go back over here, this is just a flow. Don't worry about the flow, okay? It's the concept that I want you to grab. In this flow, I was playing with it before I started the video. I'm going to just pull this out to here. In this flow, what we're going to do is we're going to read a CSV file. We're going to put it into a data table, and then we're going to look at doing things with it. And the first thing we're probably going to do is display the data, and then we're going to copy a subset to a new data table, okay? And then, of course, we'll display the subset, and then we'll add a couple of columns. We'll update the columns, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add a row, and then we're going to delete a row, and then we're going to export it to a CSV, okay? So that's what we're going to do. Now, the one thing I always recommend is when you first open up a flow, look at your variables. The variables are very important. In this case, we're pointing to a file that I have local on my desktop, is our CSV, and we're going to save it to a file local on our desktop. Don't worry too much about the other stuff. We'll get to it when we get to it. But if I look here, I have the file that we're going to work with. So field 1, field 2, field 3, this is very hello world type thing. It is a CSV based with a comma delimited. So we're looking at, just values 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing magic there. Okay, and that's the flow we're looking at. Okay, so the first thing it's going to do is it wants to load that data into a CSV. Now, I didn't create this, or maybe I started this, or I got this from somebody else. I don't know. I've been using this for a long time. I'm pretty sure I probably got the basis of it, and then I kind of worked around it and created a lot of the changes and things like that. So the reason I'm saying that is because there's a lot of logging, and I'm a big fan of logging because it allows you to see what's going on. And also one of my pet peeves is keeping your lines straight, but that's okay. That's just a cleaning thing. So the first thing is this log activity. If you don't know the log activity, it's one of your components over here. I recommend using it. It's really, really sharp for just logging information. So the first thing it's going to say is start data. The good thing about the logging is you can actually put variables and parameters and things like that in it. So you'll see that as we go through. The next activity we're looking at is the read CSV to data table, okay? So in here, it's going to read the CSV file. So we're looking at the CSV name, which is here, and it's basically going to dump it into this data table called CSV data. So if I go down here, I should see it here, right? So, oh, well, no, the output is, oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the variable types. Man, what's wrong with me? There we go. So CSV data table. And notice it is a data table. Now we do have data tables. We have a data reader. We're going to talk about that when we get to it. And we have another data table called subset. Okay, so again, apologize, I was looking at variables versus looking at the name. The next thing we're going to do is we're just going to assign. So now we have our data. This basically just reads a CSV file. I can't click into it. It is what it is. It wants the path of the CSV file, and it's going to dump it into a data output data table. A lot of these controls, especially SQL and Oracle, they have the output as a data table. That's why, to me, it's very important to know how a data table works. Because once I get my data into a data table, at that point, I can merge the data, I can subset the data, I can insert, I can delete, or I copy it elsewhere. And I have used this for a lot of customers, okay? Because in other words, I need to get data from a database, but then I need, so let me back it up. If you understand the ETL concept, extract, transform, and load, right? So extract is you're pulling your data. In this case, we're pulling from a CSV file. And then I'm going to transform it. Transform it means I want to modify it. Basically, it's just a cool word to say modifying. So I want to modify that data. I may want to add it to other data. I may want to take away data. There's a lot of stuff I might want to do. And then I'm going to load it somewhere, okay? So just think about that. In this form, our data table is always going to be our transform method. Now, what I'm going to do here is assign column names. This really is just to write out. You could delete this. And then what I'm going to do is take the column names. This is kind of good so you know how this kind of works. So the concept here, again, is we're thinking about the data column, not the CSV file, okay? So from name in our data table, get the columns. I want to cast it as a data column, and then I want to select the name of data column, and I'm going to print it out to an array, okay? That's really odd. Again, this is a video you're watching, so hopefully you can pause it, kind of look at it. The biggest thing is you can look up this stuff, right? A data column. And I said before in other videos, this is more Microsoft based. So you'll find a lot more of your information over here. See, there's the data column right there. I already had a highlight. You're going to find more information over here than you would in Javelin, okay? So let's go back over here. And column name is just another one. So select name dot column name. So the question is, what is name? Well, name is the from. So if you think about this, really this should be from. This would be an enter here. This just doesn't like new lines or white spaces. So it's kind of saying, give me the names inside my columns, and I want to cast that as a data column, okay? So in here, instead of as, you use of, okay? Same thing, but just a different word, right? And then I want to select on it. So select the name from this column name. And then from there, I just want to return it as an array. Okay, that's all that's doing. And I'm casting all that into column names. So when that's done, I should have a list of all the column names. And then I want to loop through the column names. Now they're going to be a string, and I'm able to loop through it because I'm bringing it back as an array. Okay, so if I look here, column names, for each column name, I don't think I can get that bigger because it is what it is. And then if I double click into here, item is a bad practice, but everybody uses it. So this is saying, give me the item and column names, loop through, and we're just going to write that out. And remember, I told you the log activity is very cool because you can put stuff in it, like parameters. So column name and, in this case, you use the and as the ampersand to concatenate your strings. Sorry, I said and. Yeah, that's an and, right? I'm sorry. And item, and we're going to cast it to a string, okay? Because you got to remember, it's coming through as a column name, so we want to cast it as a string. So let's see what that kind of looks like. And I'm going to come up here. I said before, if you want to test your flows, just break the connection. So we're only going to run this one. And I'm going to run it in verbose. Again, I can run it in debug, but debug stops at every single record. And I don't want to do that. I just want to dump it out. So we're going to run it. And this is what I expect. So basically it's telling me I'm running the flow chart. We're reading in the log. And then with the parameters, blah, 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 blah. It's now starting to read our CSV file into the data flow. And in here, I should start seeing my field 1, field 2, field 3, because we only asked to print out the column names, right? So that did exactly what I wanted to do. The truth is, of all that, you didn't have to do any of that. That's really the only one you needed, okay? The rest of this is just to show how to get the column names. So if I go back to here, you could also use, for an example, let me go to SQL. And if I look at the SQL query, just dump it in here. If you notice, your output is a data table. So most of the times I don't do it from a CSV, I do it from a SQL call. So you just say server name, database name, username, query, select all users, select all users, and then put data table users. And now I have a data table that I can work with, okay? So let me go ahead and just delete that. So the next step, what we want to do is come in here. I'm going to delete this one because we're doing step by step. And here I'm for each data row. So the question is, okay, where did the row come from? Well, luckily the row is actually part of your data table. Let's go back to our properties because that's most important. And this, by the way, if you don't know, this really is, so I do this all the time. And I recommend it because it's a way to separate your concerns, a way to separate your flows, is these are just flow charts, okay? Flow charts it's a really funny word, but see, it's just really just a flow chart. Then you name it to be whatever you want to. You'll know that because of the icon here. But the point of the flow chart, even though this is a flow chart, you can have many flow charts within flow charts, okay? But the best thing is it keeps this from cluttering up your screen, really. So if I go into here, we're going to say for each row, data row, inside of our data table. Now remember, this data table came from up here. Okay, that would be the output of this one, our CSV data table. So let's go back to here. Let's go into here. We're going to say for each data row, now if you remember, where did data row come from? Came from right here, okay? So in our CSV, we're going to click into it. Now you get that by saying CSV, your data table dot select, okay? And that's going to put it into our data row. For each data row in here, and then what I'm going to do is do a sequence. Now, sequence is an order of events, okay? That means next, 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 right? I can't bounce around. That's kind of relative, but it's just good to have sometimes because, I mean, well, let me phrase that. It's best practice to do sometimes because you want things to fire off in a certain order, right? So if I go in here and look, I'm now getting my item. So again, this data row came from my select from here, okay? V data row. So we're taking our data table, we're selecting on it. That's going to give us one row at a time into here. And now what we're doing is we're going to say, give me this item. And basically here, I'm just putting a count, right? Just an index of 1. Most importantly, we're just kind of writing it out. So what we're saying is data row, a counter, which is what this, this is just writing out a counter for us, the column names that we wanted, and the value. Okay, so this kind of seems a little bit better. So what if we do this? Let's go up to here. I would really like, well, it's okay. I was going to delete the other writings. Well, I guess maybe I can. Let's break this. Break this. Slide this over. Bring this straight down to here. Oops, I don't want it like that. Okay, so that would take out most of that logging for us of writing out the column names because we already did that. So I'm going to save this. It's okay. Let's go back to here because now I'm just focusing on this one. So let's click off verbose. Oh, we have an error. I must have had something, one of those other ones that I took out. So let's put it back. I don't feel like debugging it right now. So we'll just put it all back. That's okay. You know what? Oh, I'm looking for that. Okay. That assign, so there's a couple ways to sign. I like to sign here. If you look here, it is actually called assign. There you go. So if you come over and look for it, you'll be able to find it. There's another one that is over here, but it's kind of iffy. I've seen people use it. Here's the sign. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it's just something to think about. The sign to me, I think it's sign. Anyway, oh, no, I use, there's set variable, get variable. Yeah, I think it's a sign that I use all the time. There's one of these that I don't like because it doesn't work every time. And I don't know the argument behind that. And I haven't really cared. I just used the other object for that. Okay, here we go. So it failed because we are using column names. So we have to put it back. I was just trying to break down some of the logging over here. So let's go ahead and run it. That's not what I meant. Right anyway. Okay. So when we come down to here, we now see our data row is now in column 1, value 1. So the first one, put the columns, well, I guess I probably should have said this. When we look into here, the only thing we're doing here really is writing out our data, our rows, okay? When we look here, we're just writing out the columns. The only thing that really did the work is this one, okay? Now we wrote it here so we can loop into it later, but really that looping is just verifying by writing, okay? So let's look at the next one. So now that we have a data set, Well, I'm sorry, now that we have a data table, believe it or not, there is actually pretty cool a method called clone on the data table. So if I go up here and look, I don't know if it's in here. You may have to look for it. Let's try clone. Yep, there you go. Most of these methods you can still use. So clone says clones a structure of data table, including all data schemas and constraints. That's different than copying. Copy both structure and data to here, but it doesn't keep my schema in place. Now this one's a very simple data table, but imagine if you had a very complex one. Now you can do copy. I think I do copy. You can do clone. Clear is a good one because if I'm writing data and I want to do something and then I want to clear it out and then add more data to it, then I can use that. I've never used dispose, but I could see why you would want to do it. Create instance I've done. Create data reader. Some of these won't work. That's what I'm getting at, but some of them will. Okay. And again, the only thing I searched for was system.data data table. Okay. System.data table. Because that's the namespace that you would use if you were programming in Microsoft. Now let's go back over here. So we have cloning. So basically I'm taking my data table and I'm going to copy it to subset. And I'm not just copying it, I'm cloning. So I'm taking all the schema and all the, if I had primary keys and all that stuff with it, it's going to copy it with it, okay? And now I'm going to assign a counter to 1. And then I'm going to choose, I misspelled rows. Let's fix that. Okay. I'm going to choose the rows to clone. So here I'm saying for each one of these, let me copy this so we can see what it looks like. Okay. So what I'm saying is data row, check the index to string. If it equals value 9 or if the data row equals value 8. So basically we're looking to see if the row, the index of that row equals value 8 or value 9, okay? So if it equals that, then it's going to execute this sequence, okay? So it's going to add a number. Well, let's look at our log. So here we're just saying add row number, and it's giving me the counter. Now this invoke method is very important, and that's the reason I left this open. It's right here, because this is what does a lot of the changes for you. So what we're saying is my target object is going to be the subset, okay, our new subset data table. My method name is import row. Some of these are very, very tricky because there's no, not that I can find, there's not a list of these method names that you can use. But in this one, we can use import row, okay? Now it's going to know so if we look over here, the method name is import row. The results, well, if you're expecting results, you can put that there. Target object is going to be our new one, okay? And it knows because what it's doing is it's actually looping through this one, okay? So we have data table 1. We're going to look to see if the values equal 9 or 8. If they do, then it's going to import them into our subset. Okay, if not, then it's going to skip it. So basically we're subsetting the data. The definition of subset is just taking a part of your data and putting it, taking a smaller chunk of the overall data and using it somewhere else. So what we're doing is we're looking in our main data table that we got from the CSV file. We're going to take chunks out of it of 8 and 9, and then we're going to write them to a new data table called subsetting. So let's go back up. Did we write that out? I'm sure we do, because I write out everything. So let's go ahead and break. Oh, no, display is the one that writes it out. So let's go ahead and look. All this is doing is say, okay, now I've got this one, and I'm going to loop through, same as we saw before. I'm going to select it, and I'm just going to write this out. So, and this is going to write out the columns, and that's all it does, okay? Again, you're recording this, so if you just want to kind of look, I do a column index, allows me to loop. And of course a counter, just so we can have a count. So let's go back up. Here's the column index at 0. Once it gets to the sequence, it goes to there. And here we're just looping through the rows. So I'm going to go ahead and add this one. It's one of the reasons I talk so fast, just because we are adding it here, and then we're going to display it. So let's go ahead and break that. And let's go ahead and save. And let's run where we're at so we can see what we have. Okay, it should be pretty close because it wasn't that large. All right, so the first thing we have is we're going to write out the column names. Okay, that's what this is doing. We scroll down, we should see our column with our data, which is here. Okay, good. And if I just scroll to the bottom, now we're writing out our subset. Now this may be kind of hard to see. Let's see, value 9, that's what I expected. Value 8, that's what I expected. Value 7, I expect it to miss. So again, it's kind of hard to see it. Let's see, I'm looking to see where it says skip. But the point is you're going to see it when we get to the end, okay? So we'll do it that way, not worry about it right now. And you probably already see it. Sometimes it's easier to see it when you're not driving, when you're not using the mouse and keyboard. People are like, oh, look, it's right there, you idiot. That's okay. So let me just kind of line these up. Okay, so what are we doing? So we read from a CSV file, saved it to a data table. We displayed the columns, no big deal. And displayed the columns here, displayed the rows there. And then we cloned the data to another data table, okay? And if I look down here, the subset data table should be down here somewhere, right there, okay? So then we cloned it to a data table. Again, you could copy. If you want to know what those methods are again, they're right here, at the bottom of this page. Here we go. And there are a lot of them, but it doesn't mean that you can use all of them, okay? So just keep that in mind. Now, I kind of played with it a couple times, see what I could use and what I couldn't use, and it's been so long I completely forgot. But some of these you can't use, but that's okay. And some of these are common sense because you're in a workflow, not in an actual program language. And then from there, we said we only wanted values 9 and 8. So values 9 and 8. So if I go look at that folder, we only wanted anything that equaled values 9 and 8. So these right here, the values 9 and 8 should have been wrote to our subset. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that. And again, if you're doing this in testing and you want to know what's in that subset, then these up here kind of, I already showed you how to loop through that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a column to a data table. So let's go ahead and drag that in there. Now remember, this invoke method is very limited. Okay, so why don't we do this? Is this where the invoke method was? I'm pretty sure it was. So yeah, so we got import row. Now okay, it's not on the support documents, but I'm pretty sure somebody out there, probably in communities or somewhere maybe, has a list of these, and I don't really know where you get them. So, so if you go here, display, oh wait, that's display, I'm sorry. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna come into here. Now we have one called add. Some of these I kind of played with and figured out, like add. I don't remember where I got import row. Might have saw something somewhere that told me that. So here what we do, we're going to add to our column, okay? And we're going to, let's look at our properties. So it's very simple. We're going to, let me drag that over. So we're going to add as our method name. Oh, I think you can search method name. I think that's where I got the list. And then target object is our columns. So what we're going to do now is add a column. Okay. So here, if I say, let's get some real estate here. Okay. From our subset, which should only have the value of 8 and 9, we want to cast and get our data column names. Now you've already seen this. Okay. And I'm going to dump this into our names. And then I'm going to loop through those names. Okay. Columns and new, and we're going to write them out. Okay. That's all we're doing. Not too hard to understand on that one. So let's go ahead and see what that does. Well, let's go in here. The next step would be to update. So I'm trying to get it where we can write it out. So here we're just resetting our counters. And now we're going to loop into our subsetted data. Okay. And in here, this one gets kind of tricky because we're going to take each row. Okay. And I'm basically just writing this out, I think. yeah, before data row counter, column names, and then the new value, okay, or and the value, and then we're going to reset it. So scope 1. Sorry, I probably should have looked this before I did the video because it's been a while. Now here we're going to add a new column called test, okay, and we're going to go in here. We're going to say after data row is our new column, okay, and then another reset the counters. Okay, so now then from there we're going to assign test to our column name. We're going to loop through. Okay, same as before, not a big deal. You know, I'm sorry, I clicked on the same sequence twice. I was like, wait a minute, we don't do it twice. So you're here, and then, so you got to be careful what you click on. Because breadcrumb, I clicked on the same thing twice. I was like, we're looking at the same thing again. So then for each, that's all let's do it. Okay, so now let's see what we got. So let's break this one. Okay, and this is going to add a column, not a row, a column. Okay, so let's go ahead and save. And let's just run it. Now, and we're adding a column to our subset data table. Okay. Give it a second. Okay, if we scroll to the bottom, because that should be the last thing it does. Here we go. So after data row 2, column field 5 now equals test 1. Okay. So, well, we didn't update. I think we added it. So there we go. So now the next thing we do is add to the row. So I'm going to break my little chain. Just put that right there on the side. Okay. Now, how do we do that? Again, we use this invoke method. Okay. Oh, okay. So we already have an add. So here we're doing the add again. We're going to say, look, subset rows. We're going to add now on the rows. On the other one, it was columns. Okay. So this is basically firing it up, saying, look, we're going to do this. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the row and we want to add to it. Okay, so now we need to add to it. So display data in subset. So now we're focused on the rows. And this is a lot like adding the columns. So we're just writing it out. Okay, and the value to the string, no big deal. So let's see. Here's the columns. I'm looking to see where I actually add it. All right, let's just run it. Make sure I'm not passing. Oh, here it is. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so here we're adding the parameters of new values, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so make sure you click on your parameters here. I was looking for this inside the flow. So it's an in. Now, again, these could be values that you hard-coded. So if I'm building a data table, I can do that. So on the other one, we added a column. I'll go back and show you that in a few minutes. And then what we're doing here is we're just adding values. Now, this could be Tim. This could be whatever you want. Way I've done it in the past is these parameters I would put up here. Okay. So let's go ahead and close that. So that's the add there. Now, just so I can show you, let's go back down to update column. Or was it? No, it was on the add column. If I click on here, and we should have parameters collection. So here is our new add. Okay, this is what I was looking for too. Probably should have been honest. And like I said, I should probably look at this flow before I had this video, but that's okay. So new data column, and then the new column name, and then we're casting it to a string. Okay. New column name, is it down here? Yeah, right there. So field 5. There we go. So hit cancel. And that's a good example too of actually using a parameter, new column name. It's basically just without the quotes around it, okay, the double quotes. So now let's go ahead and break it and let's run it. Now again, while this is running, what I'm showing you is you can take a data table and you can do CRUD functionality to it. So if you don't know CRUD, create, read, update, delete, right? And that's what we're doing. So we took an original data table, which was from our CSV file. We cloned it to a new data table. And then what we did is that's just playing, and then we added a column to that data table. We updated the column to the data table, and now we're adding rows to that data table. Okay, so if I drop to the bottom, they should see right here. So row 2, column field 4, value 9, row 2, column 3, value 8. So, and now it's going to add. Now, the next step to the functionality is going to be delete. So let's go in here and look, and of course you got your method. This one is a little bit different, except changes, okay? So we got import row, we got add, and accept changes. These are your methods, okay? These invoked methods, basically it fires off of a method that is set on whatever you're passing it. So for an example, it is looking at a data table. Yeah, so that method should be in here. There we go. So accept changes, add, I guess I should explain that first. Add, there should be one for just add. No. Oh, sorry, it was up here. So import row. So import row. So what this invoke does, and again, not all these work. So this invoke, when I said a list of acceptable methods that can be called, you won't find it on Broadcom. And that's what I said. Somebody may have a list for the data table. And I apologize. That's where I found it. Was I said, okay, I'm invoking a method on the data table, okay, my target data table, and what methods can I invoke? And that's where I found those. Now, with saying that though, hopefully there would be a list somewhere that you could use other than what I'm using. But let's say I'm not just doing data table, maybe I'm doing a data row, maybe I'm doing some other thing that I need to invoke the methods on, then this is how you do that, okay? So again, let's see. I did this really fast, so we're going to accept the changes here, and there shouldn't be any properties. There's not. Okay, cool. There's no collections. Nope. So, and then what we're going to do is we're going to choose the rows we want to delete. So if it equals value 5, then here's another invoke, and is delete. So if I drop this and we come up here and paste, I will see a method called delete somewhere. Well, you kind of have to play with it. Not sure where I found it. I was expecting to find it here in the methods. But, oh, you know what? It's on the data row. That's why. So you have to find the one on the data row. So, yeah, see, it's on the data row. I was looking at the data table. So you can look at data row instead and find the delete method. Okay. Now, here we're saying if it equals value 5, then delete it. If it doesn't, skip it. Then we just kind of loop to it. So to back it up just a little bit, and then here's another one where just you flag it to do something, the accept changes. We delete it, and then you say accept changes to actually make those changes happen, okay? So that's how the deletion works. It's a little bit tricky, but it's kind of like say, hey, I'm going to do something, so flag it for a change. Here's what I want to do is delete. Oh, now support my delete, okay? Execute my delete. Okay, that's how that works. Now, up here, if you remember, we added a row of 5. So here we're just going to delete it. Now, the very last step I'm just going to show you to you because it's very simple. Then we take our data. We're actually taking our final subset data, which is here, and we're going to save it to a path, which is basically just the path here, okay? So let's just run the whole thing now, and let's see what we got. And sadly enough, I've been wanting to do this video for a while. Some of the things I kind of forgot until I was looking at it because it's probably been almost a year since I've built this. But the concept is, remember to think of Microsoft when you do this kind of stuff. All right, so we're done. So instead of going through here and looking at all this, let's just go look at our file. Well, I expected it to write out the file. What happened? Oh, you know what? I probably didn't put it at the end. Yeah, it did. Am I looking at the right place? Let's change that. I may have a typo here. Okay. Because it ended. Oh, you know what I did do? I didn't save it. Always remember to save when you make changes because it won't pick up the save automatically. Okay. So I'm not going to do verbose. I'm just going to run it normally because the problem was I just didn't save it. Okay. The key to that was it ended, but when I noticed the very last thing it ended was not to save. So now it's going to loop through. And again, doing debug is okay, but each one of these would be a different debug window. Now it's done. So now let's go look and see what our new import looks like. And there we go. So this is what we expect because this is our subset versus our field. Now the difference is we have our fields 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice we have an X1 called 5. Okay. We have our value 6, 7, 8, 9, test 1, where we inserted that one. Okay. And then we also entered a whole new row, if you remember that. And that's what that is. So if we go back over here and look, we read in the original data from a CSV to a data table. We displayed it. We cloned it, not copied it. And I should say clone, but that's okay, because there's this clone method that you could use. Then we displayed it as a subset, no big deal. Then we added a column. Okay. The column we added was, what, field 5 or something like that? Field 5, I think is what we added. You have to look at it and see what it is. And then we updated the column, and then we added rows to it, and then we deleted certain rows, and then we exported it to a CSV. So, and that's, I'm curious what rows. Value 5. Yeah, so the row that had value 5 in it is missing. Okay, so I was just seeing if that actually worked, and it did. Okay, so this is the idea of writing to a data table. Again, a data table is nothing more but just a CSV in memory. Okay, well, I say CSV, but basically it's a database structure, not even that. It's your fields and your rows in memory. So it's like a CSV table, just like this, but in memory, okay? And with that, you can do things like you can clone it, you can copy it, you can delete it, you can add rows, you can add records. You can do things with it. Now, hopefully this is on the video, so you can, rewind and fast forward and all that cool stuff you could do on a VCR that we don't own anymore. But you can move around in the video to see how to do things. If not, you can always reach out to me. Anyway, so I hope this was helpful. And it is a very powerful feature of using the data table. Thank you.